everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk about Black History Month. The month that is a celebration of my people, because I am a black man and everything. And it's about all our accomplishments, all the oppression that we have gone through over like centuries of living in like America and stuff like that. And even till this day, we are still being oppressed. And so I'm here today to talk to you about certain characters or TV shows or episodes that revolve around Black History Month that I personally enjoy. So I'm here today to talk to you about the Black Union soldiers of the 1st South Carolina Volunteers back during the Civil War. So I briefly talked about this in my rundown review of season 3 of Dickinson, a show based on, well, somewhat fictional, somewhat realistic, loosely based, I guess you could say, life of Emily Dickinson. And during that series, during the first season, they was on the brink of a civil war. Now, we all know what led to the Civil War. Basically, after Lincoln freed the slaves, the South decided they still wanted their slaves and did not want them to be free. So they seceded from that, the United States, forming the Confederacy. And so because of that, like during seasons 1 and 2, like the Civil War is like coming, but in season 3, it's in full swing. And so Emily Dickinson on the show, not sure how she was in real life, but in the show, she was against slavery. Her father, part of the Whig Party, who served as both a congressman and a senator in real life, he says he doesn't like slavery, but when asked the question on the show, like, you know, if he would ever like free all the slaves, this and that, he really would not give an answer. But yeah, they're from like the North and stuff like that. And so in the show, I remember, I think it was during season 2 probably, or maybe season 3, Emily was talking to death. On the show, she hallucinates a lot and she talks to death. The reason for this is because in real life, she constantly wrote poems about death. So Death is played by Wiz Khalifa on the show. And he said he's sick and tired of the Civil War because so many people either die from gunshot wounds or gangrene, and he's just getting depressed over it. But the point of this video for Black History Month is to talk about the Black Union soldiers. Now, there's a character named Henry. Henry was a very kind-hearted man in the show. He was like kind of like the groundskeep type person, the handyman of the Dickinson house. He is a fictional character, never was a real life person that I can find. And so Henry was always treated very great by the Dickinson house. However, their snooty friends did not want him around. When Emily wanted him to read the role of Othello for like a play they was putting on, they did not want Henry around because he was black. Now remember, they are from the North, and the North is supposed to be a little bit more friendlier towards black, but they really wasn't. Even during the times of the Civil War and even times of like the early 1900s and 1950s, white people of the North still had some disdain towards black. And so like, he found this out the hard way, and then at some point in time, he began like, you know, creating like this black newspaper organization. It got word down to the South, and it lifted up their spirits. But Henry decided to take it one step further. He decided he was going to leave his wife and daughter and go join the Union soldiers and fight in the Civil War. Why? He wanted his wife and daughter to like not have to be like disrespected, be a slave, and to live to see a better tomorrow. He was mainly doing it for them and other black people around the United States. Because of course, if America would have lost that war, well, things will be looking pretty different right about now. Similar to what Ron DeSantis is trying to do right now. it would not be looking pretty for us and stuff. And so like he knew the stakes, he knew what was important. And so like he went all the way down to like where they were fighting down in the South, and he joined the Union Army. Now, the first South Carolina Volunteers was run by that of Thomas Wentworth Higginson, a real life person. And he was also like an advocate. He was like a poet. He was a writer. He worked for the women's suffrage movement to give women rights. He wanted to abolish slavery, all that stuff. And he actually used to write to that of Emily Dickinson, and she used to write to him. Or better yet, she used to write to him. And so like one interesting thing about this, so like this is scattered throughout many episodes in like season 3. That's why I'm not actually doing like a review. I'm just going over like, the character profiles and what I actually learned in real life, because this was a real like infantry and everything. And not only that, but like I never knew about these people. I never heard about this in any of my history classes growing up. That's why television is so important, because it can teach you things that you never knew. And back then there were over like 170,000 of these black soldiers, and a lot of them were like escaped slaves and stuff. And Harriet Tubman, she was like their cook, their nurse, their spy. And I never knew that. Like I knew about her in the Underground Railroad, but I didn't know about like all this other stuff. And so like these black soldiers were really perfect in fighting in the Civil War, because they knew about like certain locations, this and that from like the South. So they had the upper advantage, and they helped take down so many of the like Confederate soldiers and stuff, and help win the war. Now, what I learned from the show that I never knew. So on the show, they're all fictional characters. And like it's funny because when I'm talking about many years, one of the characters' name is Michael Jordan and stuff like that. But what I learned through all the comedy and this and that was how they was mistreated. And they were just as mistreated in the North as they was in the South, but they was mistreated worse in the South, which is what the one dude from Dukes of Hazzard and like the father from Smallville pissed me off so much. Because back during like 2020, he put out a YouTube video. He was like on the side of the road, and some black person got killed by a white officer. I can't remember which one it was, because there was so many during that time. Or it might have been the black dude who was hunted down by those 3 white dudes. He decided Mr. Big and Bold himself was going to make a YouTube video asking people like, if the Confederacy was so terrible, why did black people live there and fight in the Civil War? Gee, I wonder why. Maybe because they couldn't leave the freaking South and everything. Maybe because they were slaves and they was forced to fight in like the war. But he was talking about the free black people of the South. Do you know how hard it is to get up, move to another state, let alone another city or neighborhood, when you don't have much money, you don't have a home? 'Cause remember, there was no internet, no phone, so they couldn't just like go and check like any listings that were like available. To find a job, move your family, and hike halfway across the United States. This fool seriously thought that the black people wanted to stay in the South for the Confederacy. This is why I can't stand people like that, and I lose disrespect, and I can't stand looking at people like this no more. And not only that, but if you was a free black person living in the North and slave hunters came from the South, they would wrangle up any black person they saw, whether they was like an escaped slave or not. And they would just lie and say it's an escaped slave so they can get some money. So that's one main reason why they didn't just move to the north and they stayed in the south. They literally could not leave. They was prisoners in their own homes. Swear that man acts like a jackass in the box and everything, talking about why they lived in the south. And I can't stand people like that. That is why I am glad his stinking wife is taking him to the, or ex-wife is taking him to the cleaners when it comes to the divorce and everything. Pay that alimony, because it was cheaper to keep her, but he didn't listen. And so, like, what I learned from the show in the season 3 when it came to the Black Union soldiers was how they was mistreated. First of all, they weren't even given clean uniforms. They were given like torn up, ripped up, bloody uniforms from dead soldiers. And they had to wear these uniforms with like holes in them and stuff. And they still had to look presentable. They had to form a line and do their inspection thing with ripped up, tattered clothes. Now on the show, Henry taught them how to sew up and patch up their uniforms and stuff. Another terrible thing is the pay. They was paid less than white soldiers. They was only paid $10, but once some money was deducted, at the grand scheme of it all, they was only paid $7, while the white soldiers were paid at least 13 or a little bit more than that. And that wasn't fair. They was over here fighting for their freedom, helping the Union soldiers out, and they got paid nickels and dimes and stuff like that. And the worst thing of them all was, well, actually, before I get into the worst thing of them all, they also mainly had to like dig up trenches and stuff like that. But they wanted to fight. They wanted to fight for their country, but more importantly, they wanted to fight for their freedom. And so, like, the worst thing of them all was how exactly were they gonna fight? They were not giving weapons. They were not allowed to have guns. They weren't allowed to have like knives, nothing like that, because the white soldiers feared that the black soldiers were like turn on them and kill them and everything. And I mean, so it was kind of like an uphill battle. And it's kind of like, how are you expect to win a war without any weapons and everything? They are literally going on the battlefield to die. And so that's why they was always put like in the front and like just slaughtered to death. And this was way before the Emancipation Proclamation and everything. And so on the show, Henry used to like pleaded with that Thomas man to talk to the president and this and that, and talk to the generals and stuff to get them weapons because they needed to win the war somehow, but they would not budge until eventually they had to budge because they was on the point where they was about to lose it and everything. And on the show, they ambushed some kind of like Confederate soldiers, this and that. And that's how like in real life it happened. A lot of them would ambush a lot of the Confederate soldiers because they knew where their camping grounds were, a lot of the terrain and stuff like that. And so, you really got to give it up to these guys in real life who sacrificed their lives to fight for freedom, our freedom and everything, when they was treated like crap, but they still helped win the war. Happy Black History Month, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye.